This next presentation is extraordinarily important. Edan Alexander was a 19-year-old soldier with the Golani Brigade taken hostage by Hamas during their brutal attack on October 7th. Born in Tel Aviv, but raised here in Tenafly, New Jersey. Edan graduated from Tenafly High School in 2022 before returning to Israel to serve as a soldier. On the morning of the attack, Edan assured his mother, Yael, he was safe, but shortly after, all contact was lost. A week later, his family received the heartbreaking news that he had been captured. His abduction has left a profound impact on the Tenafly, New Jersey community, where he is remembered and thought of for his bravery and selflessness. Please help me in welcoming Edan's family, who will be providing framing remarks for the next Fireside Chat.
Good evening. My name is Edan Alexander, my wife Yael Alexander, and I stand here before you today as a father, an American, and a man fighting for my life and for the life of my son. My 20-year-old Edan was taken captive by Hamas on October 7 while serving in the Israeli Defense Forces. Edan is an American citizen who grew up in Tenafly, New Jersey, joined IDF after graduating from the high school, believing that defending Israel was the right thing to do. For 11 months, my wife Yael, our children Mika and Roy, and I have waited, hoped, and fought for Edan's release. We've lived in a constant fear while much of the world has turned a blind eye. Let me be clear. The world has failed our son. The Israeli government has not made the hostages a priority. And while we are grateful for the support of the United States government, it has not been enough to bring Edan and other hostages home. Every day without a ceasefire deal that secures the release of the hostages puts Edan and others at great risk. Just last week, our dear friends, the parents of the Hirsch Goldberg Poland, received the devastating news that their son had been murdered by Hamas. Our hearts are shattered for them, and we fear that Edan could be next. For 342 days, we have been warning that our loved ones are in danger every single day when they remain in captivity. Yet, Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to delay decisive actions. Hirsch's brutal death has shaken our hope, but we know we cannot give up. We cannot allow any more lives to be lost. As a parent, we are desperately hanging on to hope, but every passing day, it slips further from our grasps. Now, we are calling on President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu and the global community to make the hostages a priority. No military or political objective is more important than the lives of Edan, Hirsch, and other innocent people held captive. Time is running out. Every day that passes without the action diminishes our hope of bringing Edan and other hostages home. That was a preventable tragedy. And every life lost is a failure of the leadership. The principle of Tikkun Olam, the Jewish value of repairing the world, demands that we bring these innocent people home. This is not a Jewish responsibility, it's a human responsibility. We're not alone in this fight. Families of hostages around the world are standing together, and we will not be silent until all of our children are home. We cannot allow more parents to grieve like John and Rachel Goldberg Poland. The window for saving Americans like Edan, Omer, Keith, Sagi, Itai, Judy, and God, and 94 other hostages is closing. We know that negotiations can work. More than 100 have already been freed. So why is our son, why are the others being left behind? The Israeli government must act now because every delay costs life. Every single life lost is preventable tragedy. There is no just numbers. These are sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, and we refuse to accept that Edan life is expendable. We are also calling on the international community, including Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, to do more. Your voices and influence can pressure both Israel and Hamas to reach a deal that brings the nightmare to the end. Silence is not neutral. Inaction is complicit in the continued captivity of these innocent people. We are grateful to the United States government for its support, but what we are doing right now, it's not enough and it's not working. We need sustained diplomatic effort that lead to the release of all the hostages. I ask you, please raise your voices for the hostages. These are human lives that can still be saved. The pain we feel as a parent is unimaginable, but what's worse is knowing that without the urgent action, more families will share in this grief. We can no longer stand by and watch our children's lives be used as pawns. We need a deal, we need action, and we need it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, the Alexanders are not alone, and not just among October 7th families worried about family members who were taken hostages, but also other families where terrorist groups or even state actors, nation states, have turned to this dark form of leverage by taking hostages under various circumstances. So we're going to meet Roger Carstens. Raj is the State Department's ambassador for hostage matters and is kind of at the center of all the best work being done to recover these people around the world. And he'll be interviewed by Adam Ciralsky. Mr. Ciralsky is the founder and CEO of P3 Media, but he's also the author of the Vanity Fair article, which this interview will follow, called Take No Prisoners. Let's welcome our guests.
Push. Okay. Great to see you all. Thanks for doing this, Roger. In prepping for this interview, one of the hardest parts has been trying to find questions I haven't asked you before. But fortunately, or rather unfortunately, your remit as the Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs is constantly evolving as nation states and non-state actors continue to take hostages. So I think maybe to level set for the audience, you and your colleagues in the U.S. hostage enterprise, some of whom are here, have had an extraordinarily busy year. Give us a sense of how your caseload now stacks up against this time last year.
Adam, thanks for that. Thanks for moderating this, or at least going the fireside chat with us here. And also, thanks to the Sufan Group. Ali, grateful that you gave us this opportunity to talk about this topic. And also wouldn't mind saying that I want to thank the Alexanders. That was beautiful. I see Liz over there as well. I carry their son's dog tag with me every day as a reminder of what this is all about. So thank you. That was a beautiful message. But to get to your questions, my numbers are going down. And that's kind of counterintuitive. I think common sense would tell you if we, for example, trade Victor Bout for Brittany Griner, that the Russians and the Iranians and others, the Venezuelans, are going to keep taking more Americans and that our numbers are going to go way up. But the truth is actually in the opposite direction. I think just in the last year, we brought back about 20 Americans from places like Venezuela, Iran, and of course the recent returns from Russia. So we still are, this is something where its history is still being written, and we may come to different conclusions in about 10 or 15 years, but right now we're finding that as we make a lot of these hard decisions, and the president makes these hard decisions to bring Americans home, we're not seeing the numbers rise.
In this polarized election season, it seems like the recovery of hostages and wrongful detainees, it seems like the last bipartisan issue where there's like full agreement. What do you think accounts for that?
I think it reminds me of my time in the military, where the work that you're doing was nonpartisan. It's for the betterment of the nation. And I think people realize that this effort is the same. I think everyone at a certain point can put themselves in the family's footsteps, or shoes rather, and you can't really do it. You can never really understand the real pain that they're going through. But I've had people come up to me from both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, and say, you know, I often think what would happen or how I would feel if it was my daughter that was being held in country X, Y, or Z. And I think when they meet family members, when they hear the stories and it becomes more real to them, they're more inclined not to make this a partisan issue. And it's not the work that we do a lot of times. You'll find that the family members will canvass Capitol Hill. They'll talk to Republicans, Democrats, congressmen, senators, their staffs. And by the time they're done doing that, it would be hard-pressed to find any member on Capitol Hill who wouldn't want to support the president when he makes that hard decision to bring people home.
So when you took the position of SPIHA in 2020, you and your chief of staff, Carolee Walker, who's out here, made some pretty significant changes to the office. What do you think, looking back, was the most significant?
I would say, by far, it was emphasizing the importance of supporting the families. Because the job in itself, I mean, you're going to work on bringing Americans home. That's just front and center. But number two, we decided that as we built out our essential tasks, number two was to support the families, bring them in, create a partnership with them, give them the information that they may not have seen or had or been denied before. Because the last thing a family member wants to hear in a situation like this is, I can't tell you, it's classified, there are things going on, but we can't discuss it. What they want to know is that you're making progress. And if you're not making progress, you've got to be honest with them. And I've done that. I've told family members, they'll say, Roger, where are we? And I'll tell them, we're nowhere. We're not there yet. Or I've said, hey, we're trending in the right direction. And about maybe 3 weeks later, I have to say, what we were doing has failed. We're starting all over with the next plan, but we're going to keep progressing. And the more honest you are with the family members and the more that they're a part of what's going on, I think the more inclined they are to support you, even when they're doing it through tears. You know, there are people out there who have been frustrated at times by the U.S. government's inability to just get the job done in a rapid manner. But the entire time, we're still linked at the hip. We're still in the same foxhole together. And I think that's been very important for their mental health. I'll frankly say my mental health. And frankly, I'll tell you this. We've had family members come up with brilliant ideas to bring people home that we in the government would never come up with. You've heard me say this before. I put the suit and tie on every day, and I surrender maybe 50% of my creativity the second it comes on and I walk into the State Department. Why? I'm in the government. It doesn't really engender creativity. But these family members, they're following these cases and they're thinking of things that I'm just never going to think of.
Yeah, it's been amazing to watch you. I spent about 15 months on and off with Roger and his team, and no idea was too far-fetched that somebody would come up with about how to bring an American citizen home. And the people coming up with these ideas, some of them were really well-intentioned, some are ne'er-do-wells. I mean, can you give us some insight into that, some flavor?
I think a friend of mine once said that at SPIHA, we don't care who comes up with a plan, who negotiates, or who gets the credit. And as that same person said, if I'm sitting next to a drunk guy in a bar and he comes up with a great idea, we're taking it, we're going to run with it and try to refine it. So we're not, we have no pride of authorship, because the goal is to get someone home in a way you don't care how you get there, as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral. So yeah, some of the ideas are pretty wild. And the funny thing is, 1 or 2 of them actually worked.
Right.
I see you nodding. You know these. Yeah.
Can you comment on those?
I'm looking at the FBI in the audience, so I'm going to say no. I joke about it, but it may not be a joke. I'm wondering the day that the FBI comes in and arrests me for disclosing something improperly on a stage like this. So I think I'll pass on that.
Fortunately, it's only like 10 feet away, so it won't be a long process. So when an American is taken by an adversary, certain criteria must be met before they can be designated as wrongfully detained. And then they fall under the purview of your office with all the resources and the intensity and the family engagement. But that designation process, and you've heard this before, has been a source of frustration for a fair number of families who feel that it's too slow, and frankly, that it favors the well-connected. So I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that.
I mean, a few things I'll say is, the first thing, it's a deliberative process, which means, in a way, I'm not really allowed to pull the curtain back and show everyone how we're making those decisions. But in a way, it's kind of clear. You take a look at the criteria that comes out in the Levinson Act, and you get a sense of where we're going. And as the Secretary said, he doesn't really care if we get more cases. He's not sitting there saying, I have a quota, so I can only let you have 50 cases. He once told me that, look, if you get an extra 20 or 30 cases, just hire 2 or 3 more people. So there isn't that quota system that's keeping us from taking people. And I would also say that of the 50 people that this administration's brought back in the last 3.5 years, there might have been 1 or 2 people that might have been rich, connected, were celebrities, but the majority of them are not. And when you take a look at who's come back and who's still out there waiting for us to do the job, you're going to find people that are poor, rich, African American, Asian, Hispanic, white. You're going to find people from the West Coast, the East Coast, people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And all we care is that you had a blue passport and you've been taken in a way that when you apply the Levinson Act to the facts of the case, have those indications of wrongfulness. And if that's the case, the Secretary is going to render the decision.
But people will counter that by saying, in the case of an Evan Gershkovich, who's got the backing of the Wall Street Journal, it's 2 weeks to get a designation. In the case of an Evan Hernandez, it can be 6 months. And so the numbers, how do you explain that?
So, I mean, Evan was, in a way, interesting, almost like Danny Fenster. They were accredited journalists in a country doing their jobs, and then the Russians, in this case, take Evan, and not only did you have that, I guess it was right out there in the open, but the Russians pretty much signal this too. It's not like they take someone and wait like 9 or 10 months for us to figure out that they're going to leverage us against them. So I think in Evan's case, it was a rapid designation just because it was right there and we got the indicators that they're going to leverage us. There are other cases where it takes a long time to let the facts kind of evolve. And to be frank, sometimes the US government knows things that are not available to the public. And because of that, we'll see things that will make us still wonder, is this wrongful or not? So to the public, it might be a no-brainer, but to the government, peeling back top secret information, cables from other countries, using law enforcement information, we might have a little more of a challenge trying to get that wrongful detention because of those factors. But I can tell you that everyone's working hard. There's no reason that we would not want to jump on a case if someone's being wrongfully detained. Picture that. If someone's being wrongfully detained, if your government was like, we just don't want to take it, that would never happen. We hunger to take these cases and get to work as long as they meet the criteria and the Secretary makes that decision.
Okay. Speaking of like hostages and hostage families, it's been pretty inspiring to watch in the cases that don't involve name brand people who are journalists or athletes. When their loved one is taken, it's like the families coalesce and they create these instantaneous mom and pop lobbying shops.
Yeah.
I think of Osman Khan, a 23-year-old, just out of the University of Central Florida, graduates, goes down to Columbia, and then meets a young woman and finds himself in the House of Dreams in Venezuela, a very bad place. And within hours, they had a war room. Figuring out who took them, how, and when. I'm wondering, is that a force multiplier for you, or is that kind of hindrance?
Absolute force multiplier. So you know this, we've flown to every single detainee's house. So like if someone's detained in Russia, I've been to their house. If someone's been detained in China, I've visited them. And when we do so, we spend about 3 or 4 hours trying to get a sense of the person, the case, what the families have been through. And going to Osman Khan's house, as you said, they literally put up a war room within hours. They went to like one big room, butcher block up on the top, people coming in, people cooking foods. They could do 24/7 ops. They were taking phone calls from people that were claiming to have taken Osman and wanting ransoms. And as the case played out, number one, they were wonderful advocates on Capitol Hill and in the media. Number two, frankly, they held the government accountable. That's not a bad thing. I don't fear that. If a family's riding me hard, that they're doing their job. You know, we all have roles to play, and sometimes the family's role is to keep pushing us to do our best every single day. So when we showed up to talk to Osman's family, I felt like we took an exponential leap in what we knew about the case and how to progress. And that's why I say we partner, because the family's going to have a different perspective that we don't. And if it's just left up to us on our top secret computer machines and the people that might be in the embassy forward, which, by the way, we don't have embassies in most of these countries, then we're already at a disadvantage. So linking up with the family, we almost always take a quick jump forward, and I think that's good for the families. Again, their emotional their health as well, but it's good for us in trying to find that way to solve the case. You don't look convinced, Adam.
No, it's been, I was thinking it through. Yeah. So I want to go back to the Levinson Act for a second. So you have the Levinson Act, and you have a series of executive edicts across, what, 3 administrations?
Yes.
All of which are designed to wall off policy from the discrete issue of trying to bring Americans home.
Yeah.
That's certainly been the intent of multiple administrations on a fully bipartisan basis. It seems, though, that it doesn't always work out that way. If I look at Russia, Israel, Gaza, one could argue that everybody's running to the soccer ball. I mean, the question of those being held in Gaza, on any given day I can read a story about Bill Burns, Brett McGurk, your boss, Tony Blinken, all being involved in trying to bring people home. I'm wondering if that doesn't give our adversaries the option to channel surf and sows confusion.
So the opposite side does try to do that. There's that old phrase that the dictators have a playbook, and whether they talk and crosstalk about this stuff or not, they still do the same things, and they do try to channel surf. And by that, they want to talk to someone who's, I guess, a foreign affairs officer who's doing this role, a military officer here, a Central Intelligence Agency officer here. In this case, you mentioned Secretary Blinken from the Department of State, Bill Burns, CIA, the President's office, you know, Brett McGurk and such. But we talk about this together all the time. There was a time when I had to call the White House or the CIA. I had no clue where their phone numbers were, who to talk to about a specific case. Now we talk to them all day long. We're on the phone. David Cotter, you were at the White House. How often did we talk to you? Literally, how many times did someone call you during the day?
Every day.
But how many times? Like 10 times a day? Yeah. Yeah. It's always like the phone's open to the White House all day long. And so why that's important to know, that when you see Secretary Blinken, Brett McGurk, and Director Burns go out, there's a coordinated battle plan that's all working together to try to get it done. And that's absolutely important, because the other side will absolutely try to channel surf and try to keep you off your game. It's very important to make sure you're speaking with one voice. Now, but I will go back. If you take a look at how we did this before 2015, I would absolutely say you could find tons of examples where the foreign policy of the United States trumped the needs of trying to get an American home, which is why President Obama conducted his hostage policy review. And I would say even nowadays, there's always a tension, but I'm going to say it's a healthy tension. If we're trying to get someone back from Venezuela, as you used as an example, we might at times be a little off kilter from foreign policy, sometimes at loggerheads, and that's why we always are trying to wrap it together and wrestle through those healthy tensions to come up with a plan that's going to get the job done and keep U.S. foreign policy on track.
I think the title for our fireside chat used the word asymmetric, and I'm wondering just if you could speak to that issue. You look at somebody like Maduro, who figured out pretty early on, after Chavez died, he takes his first American. And it gives him leverage. It puts him on the map with our government. I mean, how do you see that? I mean, he's buying himself a level of engagement that he might not otherwise have.
Every case is different. Every country is different. I would say with Maduro, that might be specific. With Iran, it might be a little different as well. But a lot of times, these countries are going to take Americans anyway. They're going to grab an American. American might have been doing something a little off kilter, or they may actually be 100% innocent. But they're going to take them regardless of whether we're going to give them what they want out in the terms of the eventual agreements. But I would say that, and I'm going to flip the question a little bit, what does it give them? In a way, it doesn't matter to us and to me. What matters is they have an American citizen, and whether they're trying to leverage or not, my job is to find a way to get them back. And that's supported by the Secretary, the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, and the President. We take this duty seriously, and we know that at times people are going to take an American to try to leverage us, and we can't just raise our hands up and say it's too hard, or it's unfair, or this dictator's trying to dig himself a place in the history of the world. In a way, that those might be interesting facts, but they're irrelevant. If they have an American, my team and some of the people that I see in the audience there, our job is to just keep pursuing it until it's done.
I would say, because our time is short, it's been remarkable, the U.S. hostage enterprise. I don't think there's anything quite like it. I mean, we live in a country where most Americans' interaction with the federal government feels like going to the DMV. Yeah. And yet, I'm looking at people here, who give their phone numbers to families and are constantly, I've traveled with you, you rent a car, you drive to Compton, you meet with the Hernandez family. You just don't see that level of engagement. I mean, the gravity of the issue definitely calls for it, but it's one of the few things where I can point to and say, okay, this is a bipartisan issue where the level of effort is extraordinary.
I guess my comment would be, in the first few weeks I was in the job, my Chief of Staff, Carol Lee, who's in the audience here, we really decided we wanted to emphasize this family support and family engagement. We knew we had to visit the families. We knew we had to get out the telephone numbers so that they could call us. But more to the point, it turned into something we did in Special Forces, assessment and selection. The people that she hires are empathetic, compassionate. Frankly, we hire people that are workhorses. And one of the, I guess the big question is, if a family member calls you at 10 p.m. on a Friday night crying because they read something in a Russian newspaper that bothered them, they just want to talk about it, we want that person who's going to pick the phone up, cry with them, and then be there available for them the rest of the week, the weekend. And I would say that the thing that I'm looking for, and this may sound strange, because you can't, as a government person, I can't require someone to give what I'm asking of them. But what I want my people to do is give love to solving this. And if we find people that are willing to love the people that they're trying to support here, then that's a win. And at the same time, I go to bed every night having failed about 25 families, because that's right now on my to-do list. You're not winning until that person actually steps back in the United States. So even though we may say that we've done a little better and we're progressing every day and with the trend lines going up, we still have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of families that we need to bring that closure to by bringing their loved ones home.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, good sir. Thank you.